In the day's other headlines, President Trump warned his fellow Republicans today that if they don't put in a strong showing in this year's midterm elections, he'll be impeached. Mr. Trump was addressing a meeting of GOP lawmakers at the recently renamed Kennedy Center. He described Democrats as mean and smart, highlighting what he sees as the stakes in the upcoming vote.
You got to win the midterms, because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached.
Hey crew, it's Adam all right, so this has just happened. In a closed-door meeting with House Republicans, Trump openly admitted that if Democrats win the midterms and take the House, he will be impeached. His own words. It was a rare moment of honesty from a man who always projects invincibility, essentially confessing that his entire survival in power depends on Republicans holding Congress.
They impeached me. I never knew I was going to be impeached. I get a phone call, you just got impeached. I said, what does that mean? It took them 10 minutes. They impeached me for nothing, twice. It's an amazing phenomena. You win the presidency, and we sure as hell are having a successful presidency, I will say that. But even if it's a successful presidency, there's been nothing like what we're doing. But even if it's successful, they don't win. I don't know what it is.
The moment they lose that majority, he knows the removal process begins. Let me show you what is sitting in the House of Representatives right now, waiting for that moment. House Resolution 353 was introduced months ago. It is a formal impeachment resolution charging Donald John Trump with high crimes and misdemeanors. 7 separate articles. 7 detailed, documented, legally precise counts.
Article 1. Obstruction of justice and abuse of executive power. From denying due process to unlawful deportations, Trump defied court orders. Article 2. Taking away Congress's power of the purse. Trump dismantled agencies and froze funds without permission from Congress. Article 3. Abuse of trade powers and international aggression. He imposed damaging tariffs and threatened military invasions of our allies. Article 4. Violation of First Amendment rights. He has retaliated against journalists, attorneys, and critics for exercising their right to free speech. Article 5. Creation of an unlawful office establishing the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, and giving Elon Musk unconstitutional power over our government and personal data. Article 6. Bribery and corruption. He has dismissed criminal cases and solicited payments from foreign governments and coerced legal settlements for personal and political gain. Article 7. Tyrannical overreach. Finally, and most importantly, he is attempting to consolidate unchecked power and erode the constitutional limits of the presidency. In this country, we have presidents, not kings.
The resolution formally accuses the President of the United States of attempting to establish himself as a lawless tyrant. That language is not in a press release. It is not on a protest sign. It is in the official congressional record, filed by members of Congress, waiting for a vote. The paperwork is done. The legal arguments are made. The case is sitting there. All that is missing is the political will to bring it to the floor. And that political will arrives the moment Democrats take control of the House. Trump knows this. That is why he is warning Republicans in such stark terms. He is not being paranoid. He is not being dramatic. He is describing the situation he is in with complete accuracy. One election stands between him and a third impeachment. One election determines whether his presidency survives or whether Congress moves to remove him. Let me walk you through why this moment is different from everything that came before. Trump has been impeached twice Twice the House voted to charge him with high crimes and misdemeanors. Twice the Senate refused to convict, but those impeachments happened in a different world, before he launched an unauthorized war, before he defied federal court orders, before he retaliated against states for how their citizens voted, before he openly threatened to use the military to occupy another country. The Venezuela operation changed everything. In the opening weeks of the year, Trump launched a large-scale military assault on Venezuela without a shred of congressional authorization. American forces struck Caracas. They seized Venezuelan oil assets. They captured the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, and flew them out of the country to face charges in New York. Then Trump announced that the United States would manage Venezuela during a transition period. The United States would run another sovereign nation by military force. No declaration of war, no congressional vote, no consultation with the legislative branch that the Constitution says holds the power to authorize hostilities. Just the president deciding that he would invade, capture, and occupy a country because he wanted to. The reaction was explosive. California State Senator Scott Wiener called it an illegal invasion and coup. He said Trump has no legal authority to launch such a war without Congress. Representative Delia Ramirez labeled Maduro's capture a kidnapping. She said the mission violates international and U.S. law. And she said something that has been whispered in Democratic circles for months out loud. Trump must be impeached. The legal arguments against the Venezuela operation are devastating. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gives Congress, not the President, the power to declare war. The War Powers Resolution requires the President to consult with Congress before committing American forces to hostilities. Trump did neither. He launched an invasion. He captured a foreign leader. He announced plans to occupy another country, all without any congressional authorization whatsoever. The New York City Bar Association, one of the most prestigious legal organizations in the country, issued a formal statement calling the Venezuela action blatantly illegal. They warned that if Congress cannot stop Trump through normal legislation, if bills to rein him in fail, then Congress must turn to its remaining power, impeachment, to rein in a lawless president. That is the organized bar formally calling for impeachment as a constitutional remedy. This is not partisan rhetoric. This is the legal establishment saying Trump has crossed a line that requires the ultimate constitutional response. House Resolution 353 maps directly onto what Trump has done. Article 3 specifically charges abuse of trade powers and international aggression. The Venezuela operation is exactly what that article describes. Trump used military force for what critics allege was an oil grab, seizing Venezuelan petroleum assets for friendly American companies. He committed American troops to hostilities without congressional authorization. He claimed the authority to run another country without any legal basis. Each of these actions fits squarely within the charges already drafted. The sponsors did not have to go back and add new articles after Venezuela. The articles were already there waiting for exactly this kind of conduct. The resolution was written broadly enough to capture the pattern of abuse that Trump has exhibited throughout his second term. But Venezuela is not the only basis for impeachment. Article 2 charges usurpation of Congress's appropriations power, and that charge was just validated by a federal court. A judge ruled that Trump illegally blocked clean energy grants to Democratic states specifically because of how their citizens voted. The court found that his administration singled these states out for partisan retaliation. That is exactly what Article 2 describes. Using federal funds to punish political enemies rather than for the purposes Congress authorized. The court ruling provides the evidentiary foundation for the impeachment charge. It is not just an accusation anymore. It is a documented finding by a federal judge that Trump broke the law. Article 1 charges obstruction of justice and contempt of court, and there is abundant evidence of both. Trump's administration has repeatedly defied judicial orders. In the Venezuelan deportation case, a judge ordered the administration to stop removing people under the Alien Enemies Act. The administration ignored the order and continued the flights anyway. Legal scholars are calling this a constitutional crisis. When the executive branch simply refuses to comply with the judicial branch, the rule of law collapses. That is obstruction in its most fundamental form. And it is exactly what the impeachment resolution charges. The text accuses Trump of destroying and corrupting the legal system and the powers of the courts under Article 3. The evidence supporting that charge keeps mounting with every new instance of defiance. The resolution also charges Trump with attempting to establish himself as a lawless tyrant. That language sounds extreme, but it accurately describes what Trump has been doing. He has claimed that his authority supersedes the courts. He has said judges should rubber stamp his decisions rather than review them. He has attacked the legitimacy of any institution that tries to check his power. He has used the presidency to punish his enemies and reward his friends. He has launched unauthorized wars and defied court orders and retaliated against states for how their citizens voted. Taken together, this pattern of conduct represents an assault on constitutional government itself. The framers included the impeachment power precisely because they knew a president might try to make himself a king. They gave Congress the tool to remove him if he did, and Trump's conduct is exactly what they were worried about. Trump clearly understands how serious the situation is. At the House Republican retreat, he did not try to minimize the threat or dismiss it as partisan noise. He told Republicans directly, "You have to win the midterms because if we fail, they will surely find a reason to impeach me." He said, "I will be impeached." He framed the 2026 elections as a matter of political survival, not policy survival, not legislative survival, political survival, meaning whether he remains in office at all. Trump has been impeached twice before and survived because Senate Republicans refused to convict. But he knows that a third impeachment with the Venezuela fallout and the court rulings and the comprehensive 7-article resolution would be different. The case is stronger. The evidence is documented. And even if the Senate ultimately acquits, the trial itself would be devastating to him. Everything would be laid out before the American people. The evidence from the court rulings, the details of the Venezuela operation, the documentation of retaliation against democratic states, the pattern of defying judicial orders, all of it would be presented in a formal proceeding presided over by the Chief Justice. Witnesses would testify, documents would be introduced, the case would be made in the most comprehensive and authoritative way possible. Even if Republicans vote to acquit, the evidence would be in the record. The American people would have seen it. Think about what Trump's own words reveal about his state of mind. He told Republicans, "They will surely find a reason to impeach me," not "they might try," not "they will fail because there are no grounds." They will surely find a reason. He is acknowledging that the grounds exist. He is acknowledging that the case can be made. His only defense is political. Maintaining Republican control of Congress so that the impeachment resolution never comes to a vote. That is a remarkable admission from a sitting president. He is not claiming innocence. He is not arguing that his conduct has been lawful. He is simply saying, "Protect me by winning elections, because if you do not, I am finished." So let us break down what this means for the country. The 2026 elections have become a de facto removal vote, the first stage of a process that could end his presidency. If Republicans hold the House, Trump survives. The impeachment resolution stays on the shelf. The evidence of his abuses remains documented but unacted upon. The precedent is set that a president can launch unauthorized wars, defy court orders, retaliate against states, and face no constitutional consequence as long as his party controls one chamber of Congress. That is what a Republican victory means. It means Trump's conduct is ratified by the political system. It means the Constitution's checks on presidential power are effectively nullified. It means future presidents of either party will know they can do whatever they want as long as they maintain partisan loyalty. If Democrats win the House, impeachment becomes almost certain. The resolution is already written. The case is already made. The base will demand action. Democratic leaders will face overwhelming pressure to bring House Resolution 353 to the floor for a vote. And with all the new evidence from Venezuela and the court rulings, the case will be even stronger than it was when the resolution was first introduced. The vote would almost certainly pass along party lines. Trump would be impeached for a third time, and the case would move to the Senate for trial. Now consider what happens in the Senate. Conviction and removal require a 2/3 vote, 67 senators. That means even if Democrats have a majority, they would need significant Republican support to actually remove Trump from office. Is that likely? Historically, no. Senate Republicans stuck with Trump through 2 previous impeachments. But the situation now is different. 5 Republican senators voted for the War Powers Resolution to rein in Trump on Venezuela. Some Republicans are privately expressing concern about his defiance of courts. Some are worried about the political cost of defending conduct that becomes increasingly indefensible. The question is whether enough of them would vote to convict, not just to express concern, but to actually remove a president of their own party. That remains a very high bar, but it is not impossible. And even if the Senate does not convict, the trial itself would be enormously significant. Everything would be laid out before the American people. The evidence from the court rulings, the details of the Venezuela operation, the documentation of retaliation against democratic states, the pattern of defying judicial orders. All of it would be presented in a formal proceeding presided over by the Chief Justice. Witnesses would testify. Documents would be introduced. The case would be made in the most comprehensive and authoritative way possible. Even if Republicans vote to acquit, the evidence would be in the record. The American people would have seen it, and the 2028 presidential election would be shaped by that reckoning. Watch for how Trump behaves between now and November. His pattern when cornered is to escalate, to become more aggressive, to double down on the conduct that created the problems. If he feels his presidency slipping away, expect him to become even more reckless, more attacks on courts, more defiance of legal limits, more retaliation against enemies, more use of presidential power for personal and political purposes. Each new abuse adds to the impeachment case, but Trump seems incapable of moderating his behavior even when it would be in his interest to do so. He will give Democrats more ammunition. The question is whether that ammunition translates into the votes they need to take the House. Think about what this means for the Constitution and for American democracy. We are watching the impeachment power be tested in real time. The framers included it because they knew that elections alone might not be sufficient to check a lawless president. A president might abuse his power to corrupt the electoral process itself. A president might commit offenses so serious that waiting for the next election is not an adequate remedy. The impeachment power exists precisely for situations like this. When a president has demonstrated that he cannot be trusted with the powers of his office. Whether Congress actually uses that power, whether the political system is capable of holding a president accountable for documented abuses, will determine what kind of country we are and what kind of country we will become. Here is the bottom line. Donald Trump's reign is in serious jeopardy. He knows it. He has said so publicly. A comprehensive 7-article impeachment resolution is sitting in the House of Representatives, charging him with obstruction of justice, abuse of power, international aggression, corruption, and tyranny. Courts are issuing rulings that document his illegal conduct. Legal institutions are calling for impeachment as the constitutional remedy. And Trump himself is warning Republicans that if they lose the midterms, he will be impeached for a third time. The 2026 elections have become a removal vote by another name. The first stage of a process that could end his presidency. Everything depends on what happens in November. Republican victory means Trump survives. Democratic victory means Congress moves toward removal. The paperwork is ready, the case is made, and the clock is ticking on a presidency that its own occupant admits cannot survive without one more electoral victory.